Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to the Let's start again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to your favorite podcast after Maghrib. It's amazing to have you here. Thanks for coming back. Last week we had a really deep conversation about struggling with calamities, dealing with pressures in our day-to-day lives, and trying to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we talked about a lot of struggles that happen externally, things that happen externally and affect us. Today we want to talk about something similar. We want to talk about a lot of internal feelings that we have as a community, but also specifically as men. Some of you may have seen a few weeks ago, we posted a story on Instagram about the struggles of men and how we feel as men we should talk about it, and maybe how the sisters should know about how we feel as well. So this is a podcast everyone needs to listen to today. As always, I am joined by the best co-host in Shia television, Sayyid Ali Radawi. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidina. How you doing, bro?
Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Can't complain. We've got a deep pod, and we have a returning guest.
We do.
We have a traveller who's returning back to after Maghrib and back to the UK for the third time, and that was our dear brother Nouri Sardar. Assalamu alaikum.
What's up, brother?
What's happening?
How you doing?
Nouri, salamu alaikum.
So cool. Good to see you guys. What's going on?
Alhamdulillah. You are.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, well,
I miss you.
Miss you too, bro.
Wallah.
as you know, last time we had Muhammad Ali on the podcast, and he's come on for the third time, and said Ali was like third time lucky, hopefully. And I was like, bro, that sounds like the first two didn't go so well. but no, inshallah, this is the third time that it will be, inshallah, a good podcast, man. How's your time in London been?
It's good. I've been here for a week. London's like that. I'm sure even you guys know living here. It's like such a love-hate relationship. And last time I was here, I was like, I'll never come back to this place again. Weather was bad. But once I came back this trip, weather was nice, sun's out.
Until yesterday.
London, yeah. But London during summer, I think is kind of unbeatable.
Yeah.
It's just when you hear those, when you get stuck in traffic, or today I spent like 10 minutes trying to pay for parking. And I was like, I'm done with this place. I'm not doing this anymore. Just to go to the gym. So at some point, like, I miss the conveniences of the US. But London, you can't live with it. You can't live without it.
Yeah, man. Home is where the heart is. Okay, so question for you. And you knew this was coming, but you just perhaps didn't know what it was. If you could put together and which, by the way, we did this question with Sheikh Khili last week, and he answered the 5 Ahl al-Kisa as his answer. So you can't say any Ma'sumin.
Okay.
If you could put together 5 Avengers, Shia Avengers.
So firstly, that's a trademark name.
Okay, Avengers.
That's a trademark name.
With a Z.
Because we, as you know, we have a group of friends. I've got a group of friends called the Shia Avengers.
Oh, all right. Fair enough.
That's our WhatsApp group. So you got to change the name firstly. We'll sue you.
Say what's the bar? Need another name.
It's our weekly question. You can't be checking this.
Who would be
You
in
can
it?
say Shia Avengers. You can't say Shia Avengers.
Okay, fine. Shia Avengers.
Too
Who would be in
technical.
it?
Too technical.
Sorry, I'm joking. Carry on.
Who would be in your Avengers? Assuming it's people who are alive or like in recent history.
Brothers and sisters, if you love the After Maghrib podcast, you will definitely love the Thaqalain app. I've just downloaded the Thaqalain app, and I highly recommend that you also do too. I've just downloaded the Thaqalain app, and I highly encourage that you also do too. What better way than to have access to a wealth of knowledge, Islamic knowledge, that allows you to understand truly what the prophetic narration was on Hadith al-Thaqalain. I've utilized Thaqalain on numerous occasions and have had the opportunity to reference Thaqalain throughout our conversations here on the podcast. Thaqalain is run by a team of brothers who need your support. The app is free to download, but make sure you consider making the intention to contribute towards this noble cause. And now back to today's conversation on the After Maghrib podcast.
What is the criteria? Well, what's the?
That's up to you.
What's their
That's
job?
up to you. It could be a
Is their job to
Radud,
avenge?
it could be a recite, it could be a scholar, it could be a guy on the street.
What's the role of the superhero group?
Up to
You
you.
need like the head of the team. You need a defender, a strong guy, a magician. Otherwise, Avengers,
That's just really hard. I don't know. Sistani?
Say the Sistani. Okay.
Or did you just tut?
Because everyone tries to give these like.
So do you want like local people that we know? I don't understand.
Anyone.
Anything.
So you're asking me who's going to save the world. So I'm giving you people who are going to save the world.
Go on.
Khalas.
Right? I'm going to give you the people that I think that are the most inspirational people that lead in different aspects of my own life. Right? So Sistani, Wala Basim,
Mullah Basim.
to recite. I think that's the only two. I can't think of anything else you want to see.
That's deep.
Yeah. And
Say
say Mustafa Qazwini.
Okay, that's a shout.
Hafadhahullah.
Allah. Who else? It's tough, man. As you're asking me for like, it's tough. It's a very tough question. I don't know. Fill in the gap, Said.
You've got 2 spots and you've got 2 guys next to you, so
No, but like
we're honoured and obliged.
You're a great guy, but there's Sistani. And then there's you. You know what, Sheikh Nouri? Throw in Sheikh Nouri.
Sheikh
Fair
Nouri,
enough.
Yeah,
Fair
sure.
One more
enough.
spot.
One more.
So a non-reciter, non-scholar. That's hard.
a random layman.
A random layman, like a worker, hard worker. Sayyid Murtada Hussaini.
There you go.
There you go.
Done.
Sense.
5.
I'd pay to watch that.
I would as well, I think. Okay, cool. Let's get into the conversation. We had a deep chat last week, didn't we, Said? And I think it kind of leads us on to this week's conversation. How do you feel?
I'm not ready. You know why?
Go on.
Because I'm not ready to speak as a man of how I feel, what I go through, and things like that. So I think it's going to be a bit
It's not easy.
difficult for me
Yeah.
to get the conversation going. So I'll leave it with you two, and inshallah I can.
Maybe that's part of...
That's part of the problem. I'm not,
Yeah, I don't want to say it like that, but maybe that's
It's
like...
part of the challenge. Me and him spoke about this in the car, ironically, a lot.
Yeah.
On the way here.
Yeah. So, okay, when you say the problem, what do you
What
mean?
is the problem?
The challenge of speaking out. So I think what I was saying to you in the car is that as men, and this is not, again, just to clarify, this is not to push away the issues that women go through, because I've seen what women go through firsthand, and it's not easy. We both seen what they go through, from everything from motherhood to childbirth. Our mothers as well, our sisters. We see what the challenges they go through. So it's not like a comparison game.
Yeah.
But as men, I can say, based on my experience, and I think that based on friends and seeing people around me, and I think a lot of men today in this society today, men are usually taught to not keep quiet, but like bottle up your emotions and keep going.
Yes.
Right? And as men, that's also kind of how we're wired. We're wired to do that. Now, as men who are, let's say, providing, going through their own things in life, challenges in life, worried about where sustenance is going to come from, where money will come from tomorrow, worried about how to be a good husband, a good father, a good son, a hard worker, top of your craft in your craft. My case, for example, top of my craft, both in my work and my community as well. Even you guys as well, how to serve your community, how to make sure that you're not making too many enemies, you're making friends, and there's so much going on in our minds, basically. Yeah. And I think what we do, there's a very nice parallel, which is a man, hope I'm not getting it wrong, a man climbs a mountain every single day.
Yeah.
Right? Which is basically the metaphor for us going about our lives, right? And every day he has a bag, and every day he picks up bricks and he puts it in that bag. And the bag gets heavier and heavier, but he continues to climb up the mountain. And I think that's the best definition of what a man is. And the challenge with that is that at a certain point, you don't confront what's inside your bag. You don't think about what's weighing you down and what's challenging you. And as a result, you just, like you said, keep it inside you. And there's a great parallel, there's a great book that I read, which kind of talks about this in detail. And it talks about how every man has a shadow. Okay? And in that shadow, every man puts inside that shadow anything he doesn't want to think about or confront. And it can be from the biggest things to the smallest things.
Yeah.
It can be big things like, for example, trauma you experienced when you were growing up, heartbreak you experienced growing up, worries that you might have in life. It can even be very small things, how my dad spoke to me this way, how my mom spoke to me that way, how this friend spoke to me that way. Growing up with that, for me, for example, a big challenge with me that I've realized growing up without an older brother has had a big impact on me in my life and how I'm shaped and the things that I have to overcome. And each of us have different challenges that range from big to small, right? Now what happens is we don't want to confront these things. We keep it inside us, so we put it where? In our shadow. Problem with the shadow is that it follows you around wherever you go. And it influences everything that you do. So every nuance you have to your character, particularly negative nuances, negative traits to you. For example, some people are very angry. Some people, for example, are not disciplined. Some people, for example, they're not reliable. A million different traits. All of that leads back to your shadow and what you're hiding inside your shadow, and it has the impact on you. So what every man needs to do is confront what's inside his shadow, unpack it, and figure out what it is and how we can come to terms with it and be at peace with it. And it's not easy. It's not easy. I think it's one thing to think that, for example, when I was young, my dad, for example, he didn't speak to me. He didn't give me, for example, the friendship that I needed. A lot of guys speak about this growing up. Or for example, he didn't show me even though he might have been affectionate, there was a certain affection that I needed that he didn't give me, right? It's one thing to know that. It's another thing to think deeply about what that is, how that impacts you, how it's affected you till now, what parts of that are you ignoring, what parts of that you have to come to terms with. That's not an easy conversation, and I think there's so many, I think as men right now, I'm 33, you guys, 32, right, around that age. We're at a stage in life where everything that we've been carrying since we were young is now catching up to us to a point where it's going to hit a breaking point, right? And one thing I realized recently, for example, with myself, and I don't want to get too personal, but I'll share with you guys some kind of perspectives that I've had recently that have kind of made me think a lot. There's things we go through in our life that impact us, and we look back at that and we think, that if I were to ask you, for example, the 5 most impactful things you've gone
defining
through,
moments that
have really, for example, it could be I got fired from that job. That girl broke my heart, for example, or I don't know, there was a time when I was homeless or poor, whatever it was, right? All these things, I'm not saying they're not difficult to go through. What I realized about myself, and this is like the kind of light bulb moment I had, I was like, you know what? I've been a certain way since I was a child, a baby. I've had a certain way about me, right? These things that I went through, they didn't change me. So let's say, for example, you go through a hard time, then you become a bit more grittier, for example, or you become a bit less trusting. It's not that these things change me, but rather what they did was trigger something inside me that was already there. So what I need to figure out is that trigger that's there, and how do I eliminate that trigger?
I see.
Right? And again, that it's not easy, but it's a must for every man to do, because as men, we are providers, we are leaders in society, and people look up to us to do everything from open the door to the car, to bring up the groceries, to actually lead communities and families. So it's important for us to unpack all that and figure out what that is. And leading into the other part of the conversation, which was tawwakul, I think they're really intertwined. You can call this podcast Men Having Tawwakul, which is a good idea for you. But like I think I told you on the car riders here as well, is that when you think about tawwakul, let's admit it, it's not easy. I think we always speak about tawwakul like, trust Allah. We think about it being easy, but it's not easy, right? And I'm not going to claim to have cracked it, and I'm not going to claim to have figured it out at all. But one thing I will say is that over the past few months, I've kind of thought of, I've created this metaphor for tawwakul that I kind of thought about how I think about tawwakul, and that is, I think there's layers to tawwakul. The top layer, which I think that everyone is at, everyone who's kind of practicing and believing in Allah, is that, we have a good understanding that Allah is in control of our lives. We understand that everything happens for a reason. But when the car breaks down, when we get that bill that we weren't expecting, when the client doesn't pay, it hits us and we get angry, we get upset, we don't react well, right? That's the first level. The second level is what I'm at and trying to leave, is that we accept that everything happens for the sake of Allah, the good and the bad, right? But what happens is we do it with a grit in our teeth. We do it just like bearing it. It's kind of like, this happened, I don't like it, but I'm going to deal with it. I'm going through this hard time, it's not easy, but I'm going to deal with it, I'm going to bear it, right? The idea of bearing it. Then there's the third level, which is what I'm trying to get to, and hopefully all of us try to get to, is that not only are we accepting everything that's happening to us, we are embracing it and we are in love with it. Thank you, Allah, for this bill that came in that I wasn't expecting. You know what? You allowed me to pay for a heat for my family. Thank you, Allah, this client hasn't paid me yet, because maybe I'll get the money and spend it on something you don't want. Thank you, Allah, that reason. Thank you for this car crash. Thank you for this death. Because I can't see what you see, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but I think it's a place we will have to get to as men as well, who are expected to manage their stress, who are expected to be in control of themselves. And both of those things are linked to having tawwakul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I like how you've linked it to tawwakul. And I think you're right. There are a lot of challenges. As you're speaking, I keep thinking about my own personal life, maybe previous experiences I've had. And you're right. There's so much challenges. There's lots of levels of stress one can face as a man, and it's not unique. And all the reason people don't talk about it, because men don't talk about it. And I just want to go back to the example you gave about climbing that mountain as a man. And I was thinking, certain experiences that I've had growing up, let's say from my teenage years until today. Every time if I'm climbing that mountain, if I go through something, I don't talk to anyone about it. And I don't know if it may lead to some level of, feeling lonely perhaps, or a level of experiencing a form of mental ill health. I hope no one reaches such stage. But you're very right. We keep filling in that bag, and it's getting heavier and heavier.
Yeah.
By the time we reach the top, either we're going to jump off that cliff, and sadly, some people do reach that stage, or we explode. And one thing men are very known to be is at times very angry.
You know, I've never, alhamdulillah, never ever been suicidal ever.
Alhamdulillah.
But you know what the craziest thing is? Like when I see a man driven to a point of either suicide or something bad, I'm like, you know what? I don't agree, but I get it.
Yeah, you get it.
I get how man can snap.
The fact that we live in a society where you can understand why that guy might be suicidal, and if you just look at the UK, the suicide rates are the highest with men, like predominantly with men, and there's no coincidence that it's also men who face the most mental health issues, but report those mental health issues the least, because generally speaking, like you said, we bottle it up, and just even getting into the zone to have this conversation in itself, for me, is hard.
But you know, there's one thing you said, and at least to a point you made in the car, which was very nice. Say that you were like, you know, we don't talk about our issues. And I think the flip side of this conversation is this kind of mental health culture that we're in right now. I'm not an expert on mental health or anything. I'm not going to claim to be, but I'm like, there's this culture of, okay, let's all talk about it. Let's get it out in the open. And the standard line you heard time, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be upset.
It becomes a tick box exercise.
That's what it is. It's okay to talk about it.
You talk about it, and this is what I kind of wanted to get at on Instagram. Like you don't want to talk about mental health or the health of your mindset for the sake of saying, oh, we did a podcast on mental health. Like, because that defeats the purpose entirely. Like, you have to be raw, and you have to be intimate, and you have to be ready to be vulnerable when you have these conversations. And as guys, it's very hard to do that. And like you said, like these experiences lead you up in life, and you said that you find it hard to speak about it.
Yeah.
Because our hearts become harder as men, and maybe that's why we connect so much with the story of Abdullah alayhi salam or whatever it is. Because for us, maybe it's like a mechanism to channel built up emotion in our own lives, and we can mourn something and we can let it out. And I know that's not the purpose of grief and all of that, but part of me feels like there's a lot of beauty in the grief of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam.
100%, yeah.
And the way they dealt with it was just a next level. So
keep in mind, again, like the one thing, like it's important to speak to people. And again, I'm
100%.
Full caveat, I'm not giving mental health advice, but I think we forget that Islamically, there's two perspectives. There's two parts of this. One is that Islamically, it's good. Islam teaches you to be patient, right? Yeah. Be patient. Be patient. So I'm not saying don't speak to people, but don't complain. What does Islam say? Don't complain. Don't be agitated.
Yes.
You know, be patient. At the same time, there is a hadith which says, you know, the one who tells his believing brother of his problems, it's like those problems have halved.
Yeah.
So we do have speaking to others
100%.
as a concept in Islam, but at the same time we forget that it's important to, you know, there is a level of men need to kind of keep it in, because as a man, you know, the people looking up to you for leadership and who are looking up to you to help them, kids for example, you know, there's a really funny comedian joke where he's like he's making fun of Donald Trump, and he's like Trump, and you know he goes in his press briefings and he goes, you know, you have no idea how scary the press briefings I read are. He's like, I don't want to hear that. You know, it's not like I go to my kid every day and say, listen, just to let you know, kid, I can't pay the bills tomorrow, but you know, have a good day at school. Go ahead. You know, so kids don't want to hear that from you. They don't want to hear your problems. The people that are looking up to you for leadership and guidance also don't want to hear that. So there needs to be a balance between who you speak to, right? But also how you deal with the stress, and how you tackle the stress, and how you untie this knot inside you that every man has deep in your chest. We all have these knots inside us. How do you untie that knot?
You know what's interesting, Nouri? You mentioned a very nice point where you said if you speak about your problems to your believing brother, your problem is sort of half. And I'll share, you here being on the podcast. Me and you had so much deep conversations.
Back in the days.
I know when I lost my father, we spoke so much, me and you. I know before getting married, I spoke to you so much. Like, there was so much that when speaking to you allowed me to process firstly what's happening, and what's the best outcome and how to move forward. Yani, the problem is if we're not going to chat to no one, we don't know what we're going to be like headless chickens. But I think if we can't speak to our brothers because maybe we see, it may be a sign of weakness, or I don't know what people assume.
But I think it's also about knowing who to speak to.
Of course.
And when to speak to.
Like the conversations I've had with you, I'm not going to have with everyone.
Of course. And sometimes, like, you tell too many people about your problems, you feel like I've shared too much of myself.
If I can add as well, like there's like an epidemic in our community, especially with youth, and that's having bad friends, bad company. That in itself is like starting point. One thing, talking to your friends, but do you have friends to talk to? Do you see what I mean? Like having believing brothers, like the hadith says from Amir al-Mu'mineen, in itself is an achievement to have a believing brother, and then to be able to open up to them will help you. But like we should continuously critique ourselves and say, who do I have around me? We have this saying on the podcast, we say, it's like you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And we genuinely believe that, because you look around you, there's also studies on this. I mean, if there's studies, for example, if your 5 closest friends are higher earning in terms of their income, you will also likely be higher in earning in terms of income. There's these kind of studies out there. In the same way, the friends that you speak to need to be constructive. They need to be supportive. They need to be trustworthy. They need to be confidential. Like there's a lot of characteristics in itself, which you are trusting that human being with. And the second you open up to them, and as men, we're by our nature, I don't think we're trusting beings.
And don't forget, even what Ali says, he goes, I don't blame my secret for being shared around when I shared it with someone myself. That's just paraphrasing. So again, it's about being cautious about who you tell your problems to, and how they'll react, and if they'll actually help you, And I think, hopefully we'll delve into this more, but I think one thing that we need to kind of normalize is also speaking to Allah about our problems.
I was just going to come there,
right? I think one of my Hussein Mekki, I'll shout him out. Told me something beautiful. A few months ago, he was like, "Look, you need to have." He goes, "I want you to turn to Allah, and I want you to say, Ya Allah, I seek." Not just a relationship with you, I seek an intimate relationship with you. And I think that's a whole different way of thinking, because I realized, like, for the longest time, my relationship with Allah was one of duty. I got to pray, let's do it. I'm going to do this Amal, let's do it. Ziyarah, let's do it. Okay, just again, with the grit in my teeth. It's a difference between saying, you know what, I've got time in my hands, say I'm traveling, for example, I'm alone, let me do some munajat. Let me speak to Allah directly. Let me have that relationship with Allah directly. Let me speak to you, Allah. Not just about my problems, but let me praise you for what you've given me. Let me have not just a friendship with you, but a beautiful friendship with you. I think that is another level of relationship with Allah, and one that we have. Because, I think all men, seek intimacy. And like it or not, this world's not going to give you it in any way. It's just going to disappoint you. So having that intimate connection, that relationship with Allah. And when I say that, for example, we seek it with our parents. Forget women, we seek it with our parents, with our father, we seek it with our mother growing up. When you're trying to get married, for example, you're looking for a partner who you believe, you think falsely, can take you to where you need to be, when in reality it's all inside you. Right? I'm not saying marriage is a bad thing. Marriage has a lot of positive things with it, right? And you grow. But my point being is that you have to have that they call it self-love these days. Love yourself, be one with yourself, and that really is about being one with Allah and having that love with Allah that no one else can touch. There is a boundary, it's a circle, you and Allah. I told you in the car, I was like, I decided that I
missed out on this car journey.
Well, I think that was a real podcast. We'll try and revisit some of the points.
Honestly, bro, this is like
this is the crunch, like the
follow.
after.
This is the after. No, this is where it happens.
Sorry. So briefly, I was like, what? I've decided that all my validation and all my love exists within the 4 walls of myself. Nothing outside me is going to validate me. Be it, for example, friends, be it, for example, work, be it opportunities, be it travel, whatever it is, from the little things like this coffee to the big things like where you live in the world, right? It doesn't matter. Everything is inside here. Anything I get outside that is a bonus. It's a blessing, or it's not meant for me, I turn it away. But if I lose out on something, it doesn't matter, because I'm fine the way I am. I have this validation inside me between me and Allah, right? I think that's the mentality. I mean, we had this conversation about validation in the car.
Yeah. When we talked about validation a couple of weeks ago, do you remember when we did that God-centricism conversation?
Yes.
We talked about the need as human beings to seek validation. And we seek validation in absolutely everything. And part of that comes back to now me as a dad of kids, alhamdulillah, toddlers. Like I read a post yesterday on Instagram. It's like how the toddlers seek affection and why they do it. It's because they're seeking validation.
That's deep.
And so they follow you around. They'll say no to everything to test your boundaries. And God only knows like how much that tests my boundaries.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They might hit you. They might laugh at all your jokes. Like they do everything because they just seek intimacy and validation from the parent. Because the only thing that
They
matters,
want the parental love.
yeah, bro.
That
Like
bond.
kids don't pay taxes. They don't have to fill up petrol.
They're chilling.
They're not worried when the MOT is.
And if
They're
you don't give it to them,
yeah,
they
it's
seek
the
it
end of their
outside.
world.
Yeah.
And the thing is, none of us remember what our life was like prior to the age of 2 or 3. No, none of us remember it. But a lot of those small, unknown years of our life, which I find insane, like the years of your life which you grow the most physically, developmentally, in those years of life, we don't remember what happened to us, right? We have no recollection what experiences we had, but a lot of those may have then determined how we ended up now.
Yeah.
So internally, the need for validation, seeking like the love languages, for example, acts of service, touch, all of these things that we hear about. Some of those may be a result of how we were treated as kids. It might be, a middle child of 5 kids, for example, might feel neglected. So they extremely value time, one-to-one time, company. These are kind of things which we are obviously a lot deeper than maybe our own expertise takes us. But that validation point is so, so valuable. Said, I wanted to ask, because there's a few directions we can take this, okay?
Wait, so sorry, before you jump in, can I jump on this validation point?
Yeah,
So again, this is quite personal, but I think it's important to mention. So me, for example, growing up, and it's so interesting because when we think about what affects us growing up, right? Our minds instantly go to trauma,
Yeah.
be it, for example, abuse or anything else, right?
Yeah.
But it's not just those crazy things that can happen to us, that can happen to kids that can impact us. It's also the very small nuances.
Yeah, it's the day-to-day.
Right. So
Yeah.
for me, for example, it was very simple. It was growing up without a brother, right? My parents didn't lack when it came to loving me. They were perfectly fine. Because I didn't grow up without a brother and I had 2 younger sisters and there was a gap between me and them, I was kind of almost, not a lonely child, but I was without that brother to guide me, I had to kind of figure things out myself, right? And the catch-22 of that is that my cousins were also a lot older than me. My uncles were, so all my family was older. I was kind of like the youngest, and there was a big gap between me and everyone else. So as a result,
Fend for yourself.
not fend for myself, there was that desire for validation in others that came from that.
Yeah.
Be it, for example, older people in our community, attention, for example, as well. And it's a very small nuance about myself that I didn't realize that I had, that people that even know me might not understand that I do have or had, right? And I think, again, like figuring out why that's there and then overcoming that is the most powerful thing. It's the most difficult thing. It's the most powerful thing. But because Allah wanted me to take me on a journey where, like I said, now the only validation I need is, inshallah, within myself and nothing outside of me, right? That's the journey of becoming nafs al-mutma'inna, which the Quran says you have to become, the contented soul before you leave this world. All of us, before we die, we are meant to become the contented soul, nafs al-mutma'inna, right? And each of our journeys there is going to be very difficult and very specific to our experiences, right? And that, by the way, that need for validation, I've seen that in so many kids and so many youth in our community. And it's so funny because it used to annoy me so much.
Yeah.
And I realized it annoys me so much because I had it myself deep down without realizing it, I remember like there was this time where, I got called out on Twitter years ago. Sounds pretty funny to talk about now. I won't get in detail about it. But for a while, it really upset me. And I was really thinking about, okay, why is this upsetting me? What's the issue here?
What am I? Do you mind if I ask what it was or what was said?
Basically, like one of my old tweets, which was kind of sectarian, was brought out. Remember this? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, we won't go to
Good old days.
Yeah.
Anyway, so again, I was like, I was happy to apologize because like it's not really mature, even though it was a very old tweet and it was brought out for reasons, probably nefarious. But anyway, so for a while, it kind of upset me. I'm like, why is this upsetting me? What's the issue here? And again, the issue that I found was that I needed validation from this person or this group of people that was calling me out. So I thought about that. I was like, as a Shia...
Which is why you apologized, are you saying?
No. This is afterwards. So I was happy to...
You're reflecting now.
Yeah, I was happy to apologize because, again, it's immature, it's brought out, I can't do anything about it, fair enough, I wouldn't do it today. It is what it is,
Yeah.
So post, I was asking myself, okay, why is this upsetting me? What's the issue here? Like, why is it getting to me, basically? And again, it was like, because of that lack of an older brother growing up, anyone who's kind of like my demographic, my age group, a bit older than me, I'm like, I want him to respect me. I want him to like me, you know? But I'm like, you know what, as a Shia of Ali, as a lover of Ahl Bayt, do I want someone who's viciously, vehemently anti-Shia, you know, and malicious towards Shia to like me? Absolutely not. So then what's the problem? The minute I was like that, I was like, you know what, screw it. Who cares? And then when it did come up again once or twice, I'm like, doesn't affect me in any way, shape or form. I don't care, because I've divorced myself from this idea that I need to be liked. And I think that is what a lot of kids, again, growing up, I've realized kind of have. And you see it on very, very small levels in characters that people have. Let's say, for example, you have a young guy who works with you, for example. Just the way he's speaking to you, and you know, the way he's trying to grab your attention, and the way he and you know, oh, look at me, I'm doing this. And I see it in so many people. I see it, for example, relatable reciters sometimes. Like I'm so ignorant to what the reciters are these days and what they're reciting and where they're reciting and whatnot, except for one reciter which I love, which is Mullah Basim, who's on the Shia Avengers list, right? So sometimes reciters come to me, oh, you know, I worked with this reciter. I went here. And they're trying to show up. I'm just like...
Yeah. That's the thing, we use
I'm like,
language.
No, I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Number one. But all I see is your need for validation. Yeah. And that's annoying me.
But do you think like sometimes we use language like attention seeking, attention grabbing, stuff like that, which can sound derogatory or even make someone or make a child, or like you talk about a teenager. I remember when I used to teach in Sunday school, and I used to teach, and some of the boys who I used to teach still listen to the podcast, so shout out them. And they're now like 20, 21, 22 years old. But like for that age group, a lot of people would say that 14, 15-year-olds in the stage of bulugh, they're attention seeking, they're attention grabbing, they are a nuisance, they have ADHD, like they'll just try and pigeonhole a character into anything they can, and just forget about it. But really, deep inside, there's a lack or a void of love, or there's a need for, like you said, for validation. So there's a yearning for respect.
I think what I mean? I think that's what it is. We need to teach our kids and our youth to love themselves and value themselves, and not seek anything outside themselves. Because again, that can translate to validation. It can translate to, for example, chasing women. It can translate to chasing attention for anything else. It translates to so many things that men suffer from, not just in that age group, but growing up until us and beyond. It's that lack of, you know, everything that's within me is enough.
Everything within
there you go.
me.
It's also Husseini, Haidar Husseini. It's a great thing about being in the Shia podcast. Stop, let's recite a Noha. So again, like it's that self-value. That self-value. You know, we talk a lot about humility, and we talk a lot about, you know, being humble, and being humble is very important, you know. But I think one thing that I realized growing up is that sometimes we think about humility in the wrong way. Humility shouldn't be about self-deprecation. Yeah. That's the issue sometimes we have. We're humble. I'm not good, you know, I'm not a good poet, I'm not a hard worker, you know, I'm trying, you know. That's not a good mentality to have. You need to believe in yourself. You're right. You need to believe in yourself. You need to believe you can go far. You need to believe, to a certain extent, you're better than you were yesterday. The trick is, you're not better than anyone else. I'm not better than anyone here. But compared to who I was yesterday, I'm a king compared to who I was yesterday. You need to think like that. And it's funny because there was a really nice reel that I saw from a Sunni scholar actually, who was saying, he's like, how do we, you know how we have to live the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yes. How do we live the name of Allah al-Mutakabbir? Because al-Mutakabbir means what? Basically, how do you translate that? Al-Mutakabbir. From Kabir. It's like being bigger, basically. Allah is greater. The grand. Yeah, but it's kind of like, not, I don't say use the word big. It's like kind of like a...
I understand the Arabic.
I can't. It's like a show of kind of, you know, I'm great kind of insinuation, right? How do you be that? Authority. Yeah, how do you be that? Because you can't be, you know, you got to be humble as a Muslim. And he said something very nice. He goes, it's not that you're better than anyone else. It's not that you're better than anyone else. It's that as a believer, you value yourself so much that you're above nonsense. You're above sin. You're above petty conversations. You're above, like, you know, dunyawi conversations. You're too good for that, right? That mentality that you need to have, which is why I mentioned to you before, you know, like going to the gym, working hard on yourself, you know, being disciplined is so important, because as a man, going back to that conversation, you feel strong. You feel like you're in control of yourself. When you feel like you're in control of yourself, you feel sick.
Okay.
You don't feel better than anyone else,
Yeah,
but as a man, compared to who you were yesterday, you know, you feel like a king. I think that's very important.
Let's kind of progress this, I think, onto the next stage. So we've established that men bottle up. Okay.
Just before we progress, can I just say something about validation?
Yeah, go on.
And it may sound weird or strange.
No, of course not.
I don't think I'm unique. I think there's others like me as well. But Wallah al-Azim, I don't think I have ever experienced a time where I'm like, I want to feel validation.
So,
I don't know.
You know what? So
hang on. But there may be.
I'm gonna praise you.
There may be instances where I'm like, okay, do I want to please someone? Maybe please my mom. Like
That's what you mean, yeah.
From that sense, okay, I understand. But the validation of, you know, I want people to like me or things like that, I don't know why it exists. Number one, I'm sure there is, as we mentioned, maybe it affects you as you grew up, how your life was, and it determines how you are as you grow on that journey to becoming a better man, inshallah. But I think one thing that helped me, and again, I'm not unique in this, I'm not special, I'm not just because I'm, I don't know, Ali Radwi or something, but I know from a very young age, I was like embedded from my parents that I will have my own grave. That this is something very important, and I always remember today, like if I face a situation when someone tells me, no, don't do that because he might think wrong of you, or and then I counter that argument, I'm saying, yeah, but he's not going to be sleeping in my grave.
Yeah,
I'm sleeping in my own grave. So I think the moment we can sort of understand that we don't care what Tom, Dick and Harry say, and you know, bro, it's all about what God thinks, what is right in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as you know what you're doing right.
So subhanAllah, again, it all ties into tawwakul. And again, the point I was making in the beginning was that every man has their own struggles.
Yes.
My struggles aren't your struggles.
Yeah.
Right? That's a beautiful thing. And you mentioned that your parents instilled it to you at a young age, which is the point I was making, is that we need to instill the same thing into all our youth as well, because a lot of youth, again, I think that is kind of the trajectory to being a man. You think about the men in our community. Think about names that come to your mind about people who you look up to who are men in control of themselves. They don't seek validation. You know, they don't care what people think of them. They do what they think is right? And I think that is what I've struggled with. And again, when I say struggle with it, I also say like it's been very, very like tiny and nuanced and not really noticeable. Yeah. But exists where it exists in my shadow. No, and therefore it influences things that I do.
Yeah. Right? I mean. It's you know, you can have a million pebbles that weigh the same as a boulder. Like it's the smaller steps and the smaller nuanced day-to-day interactions which will allow it to have a bigger effect on you. But like, just coming back to what I wanted to say, and very, very relevant to what you were saying, Said, like we've established men have bottled up a lot in their lives and our lives, including all of us, and the need for our validation, and it may be subconscious. I may do something for the need for, and to be fair, I think as men, a lot of us, we do our duty as men sometimes to seek validation, even if it's from ourselves, like to say, yeah, I know I'm a good protector of my women folk, for example. But the pitfall for a lot of men is the insecurity that I'm not good enough. Maybe I haven't achieved enough.
It's a voice in every man's head as well. Sorry? It's a voice in every man's head.
Yeah, like I should do more. And Wallah al-Azim, when you're speaking, Sayyid, and you say, there's a grave that belongs to me, I swear, I was thinking to myself, why don't I think like that? That's such a good, like, just statement to tell myself. And then while you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, like, why am I not thinking this at salah time? Awal waqt, yani like, you know, fadila time. There's a grave that belongs to you. You know, how are you going to decorate that grave now? Like, we don't know how long we're going to be alive. That's so true. Should we decorate the grave or not? Like, you know what I'm saying? But then that how do we get, this is what I'm trying to struggle with in my own personal life, okay? How do I get to the point where, like, the yearning for something, or like the insecurity I have for something, so I may feel I'm not doing good enough at this, I wish I could have more of that. How do I take it from there to then what you said about being nafs al-mutma'inna, like being content with Allah. Allah SWT is content with you and you're content with Allah. Because in my mind, it's on theory, like, sounds great, yeah? But what are the practical steps I do? So what are the nuanced steps I do? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's always been my biggest challenge, because I can read all the books about it, and I can read, for example, observe yourself and dissociate from your mind and all these things that these self-help books, if you want to call them that, can teach you. But like you said, practicing it is difficult. And I think one hadith that we hear all the time, that I kind of thought about more intensely recently, is when the Sahaba and the Prophet were eating after a battle, and the Prophet and they just finished Jihad, right? And the Prophet goes, okay, so the smaller Jihad is finished. Now let's work on the greater Jihad.
Jihad al-Nafs.
What's the great Jihad? Jihad al-Nafs, right? We hear that all the time. Oh yeah, it sounds like an hadith. I watch a lot of war movies, like recently, and one thing, especially like these recent war movies that come out, it shows you how dark war can be, how violent it is, how crazy it is. And just as like a sidetrack, and this is all leading to my point, there's a really good show that I was watching. It's about the World War II in the Pacific Theater. So when the US Marines were fighting the Japanese, right? And it starts off with a boy, very like scrawny young boy. He wants to go to war, he wants to join the Marines. And his dad's like, look, like I was a veteran, I was a doctor for World War I veterans. I've seen what war does to people. I don't want you to become like that. He's like, no, I want to go. He goes. The things he sees, like in the war, like everything from, for example, your friends around you being killed, sleeping in a foxhole with a dead body in there, seeing people get chewed up around you. There's a scene where, and this is all like factually happened. There's a scene where the Japanese, they would basically booby trap women who are walking with babies with bombs, so that when they go to Marines, they would blow up the woman, the baby, and the Marines all together, right? So messed up. There's for example, I know it's very dark, but there's a point.
Yeah, no, I know what you
mean. There's a point where, for example, he goes to, so he was in a mortar squad, and he fires mortars. They launch bombs at the enemy, and he goes to a village where all the houses have been bombed with mortars, and he goes to one of the houses, and there's a woman there dying with her family, and he's like, was this my mortar that killed her? And she basically dies in his arms, right? All that happens, he comes home, right? And they always say about this when it comes to war, men never speak about the wars they go through. Again, going back to how men are, right? His mom's like, okay, isn't it time for you to go get a job? Like, why are you sitting here? When people are asking him, what did you learn in World War II in the theater? Did they teach you maths or anything? We could find you a job. And he just like, he goes hunting with his dad, he breaks down, and he's consistently breaking down. Yeah. He can't explain, like I can't explain to you what I saw watching that show. He can't explain to his family what he's seen.
Is it like a level of trauma that they live with?
Basically, he has that trauma consistently, right? And the point being is he can't explain what he's seen. Yeah. He can't explain what he's been through, right? And no one around him understands him. And I actually thought about a couplet which kind of relates to this, which is that all men go through wars, be they in their minds or be they real. But when it comes down to it, it's the good men that remain to clear up the rubble. And the reason, like, I connected with that, again, I've never been through, I don't know what was like God protects us all from going through a war, right?
Every day.
We see it, what happens in Gaza, like, you see how crazy it is, right? I can tell you, though, I know what it's like to go through something difficult and not being able to explain it to anyone. Yeah. And keeping it inside you. And I think, when I think about the hadith now, when the Prophet tells the companions, he's like, okay, the minor jihad is done, now the real jihad has begun, the bigger one, right? Think about what war is. The fear of death, people dying around you. And now he's basically insinuating that the fight with the self is more difficult than that. SubhanAllah. Isn't that insane to think about? Yeah. And again, like when we talk about how the minute I opened the conversation and I said, we need to talk about how difficult it is the challenge that men go through. I saw your eyes straight away, and I saw I could see inside you had things that were difficult. I could see, and again, I was happy to have this conversation because I know both of you well. I know all three of us here have been through stuff that is very difficult to talk about and explain to anyone. Forget even each other. Sometimes you can say, "Oh, this happened." Let's say, for example, you went through something difficult. It happened. How do you talk about the emotions? There are no words to describe. There are no words to describe what that felt like. There are no words to describe how that made you feel confused. You can't describe that to anyone around you, right? Now the challenge is, how do you deal with that? Like you said, and I think the answer is that jihad against the self. Right? And for me, that jihad against the self has been a triangle. That jihad against the self has been from a physical perspective. So I believe that every single man, should be in some sort of physical activity, be it gym, be it martial arts, be it yoga, whatever it is, some sort of physical activity, because that is a time where you can exert all that anger in you, all that
let off steam,
emotion in you, let off steam, and not only that, but discipline yourself and build yourself in such a way where you feel strong. Yes. Man needs to be strong 100%. And disciplined. And committing to that every day is important. Number two, from a spiritual standpoint. So one thing I would also recommend to people is that you set yourself, for example, a spiritual schedule, where, for example, every day, you say every day, for example, I'm going to read these surahs of Quran.
Guys, sorry about the background noise. We have some construction work going on
So
outside.
can you continue? Or?
Is it picking up?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So
anyway.
it's fine. It is what it is. The
I think pause.
Let's go to our sponsor. The spiritual schedule, which is like every day I'm gonna, for example, I commit. You pick one thing to commit. You pick things to commit to. I'm gonna pray on time. I'm gonna read Dua Yastashir every day. I'm gonna read Ziyad Ashra every day. I'm gonna read these surahs of the Quran every day. You pick the things that benefit you. A lot of our a'mal, be it Quran or be it du'as or be it tasbihs, they have effects on you. For example, you can do things for wealth. You can do things for. There's a tasbih you can do to only love Allah, for example. There's tasbihs you can do to have a better memory. There's a lot of a'mal you can do to benefit yourself. So you look at what you lack in yourself and you use spirituality to get you there. So you make a schedule for yourself every day of the du'as, a'mal and tasbih that you're going to do. And then lastly, which is something that I need to do as a serial overthinker, and I told you this in the car as well, is that for every gift there's a curse. My gift is writing and creating, and my curse is that my mind is everywhere. Past, present, future, multiverse, just all over the place. So to bring my mind in, I need to make sure that every day, or as much as I can, is to read every day and write every day. So I have built a schedule for myself where I'm attacking myself from all these three. Jihad, it's jihad against yourself. My jihad is three fronts: physical, spiritual, and mental. Right? And then you are attacking yourself from all fronts. So that is the practical way to get to that point of tawakkul. Tawakkul. But again, this is the point. The reason I go back to the hadith about jihad is that it's jihad. It's not easy. It's not like, oh, I'm there now, I've done it. Oh, yes, okay, now I've got it. No, it's a daily thing that will get tougher and tougher and tougher and more difficult until the day you die.
I love the point of spirituality.
Yeah, it's like, no, I was going to say, it's like, do you remember last week what Sheikh Ali said? It was, Sheikh Ali was on last week. He basically he said,
Sheikh Ali was on last week?
Yeah, bro.
You guys didn't record it an hour ago? Wow.
I'll say.
Ali's episode that aired last week.
Okay.
Sheikh Ali was in this room last week. I don't know if it was true or not. Nah, I was saying in the conversation last week, now he said it's like we sometimes discuss things in an incomplete premise. So he gave the specific example. He goes, imagine you're in hospital, you're not well or something, and you're like, you ask the nurse or the doctor, you're like, yeah, where can I buy some tools or paintbrush or this or that? They're like, what are you on about? You're in the wrong place for this. It's not the right place. No, you're not here. It's like when we say, why is this world not easy for us? Why is there no suffering? And you've misunderstood, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this world with challenges and trials and tribulations for us to go through, for us to come out of, and knowing that we as souls can take it on and that we can overcome it and bear it.
And I think the reason we need to have that jihad against ourselves and strengthen ourselves is that, again, like many days things will be okay.
Yeah.
You know,
and on the days
you're driving outside, sun's out, you know, everything's good, bank account is full, you know, you're going home, taking takeaway for home for the family, everything's cool. Yeah. You know, it's fine. And that might happen for a day, a week, a month, even a year. Then something bad happens and you're not ready for it and you break. So the point is to keep yourself fortified, again, from those three aspects, in such a way where you don't break when something bad happens to you. When something
buy an umbrella on a sunny day.
There you go.
That's it.
That's a bit of a oversimplification. I was going for like, you know, power and strength, and you know, you just went for the umbrella, but it's the same metaphor.
Same message.
I'm going to go to the spirituality.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very core in this conversation.
Yeah.
And I think it's the one that really stands out to us as Muslims. And I think we have to use spirituality to our benefit. And I think it's the greatest avenue we can seek if we want to overcome challenges that we face. And you mentioned the examples like if you want, I don't know, rizq, you can do this. You want this, you can do that.
We have solutions for everything.
The problem is the gems are there.
Yeah.
We've closed the treasure box.
Yeah.
And being Shia Muslims, the school of the Ahl al-Bayt, bro, they have the best treasure box and the right tools that can guide us, allow us to overcome any situation that we face. And you mentioned, you know, for example, going to war and things. You know, when someone goes to war, when someone goes to battle, they take a sword, they possibly take some body armor.
Maybe not a sword these days. Huh? Maybe not these days. Take a sword.
Maybe an AK-47 or something. But in reality, we can use that same example with our faith, our belief, our iman, our tawwakul, our resilience in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that never to forget, if we are in a situation, He can take us out of it.
I'll make it very easy for our viewers. Go to duas.org.
Yeah.
I'm not joking.
No, you're right.
Go to 99 Names of Allah. First thing you do, there's a page, 99 Names of Allah. It has all the names of Allah and what effect they have. Al-Razaq brings rizq. Al-Rahman, memory. Al-Azim, faith. There's a lot of these stuff.
Yes.
Literally, just go through the ones that benefit you, the stuff that you want. Very easy. And write them down on a notepad. I have a notepad where I have all my tasbihs that I try to do every day. Have a tasbih with you, every morning. Spend 10 minutes just doing all your tasbihs.
Yeah.
Then go to the Quran section, surahs. Literally go to the last part of the section, the shortest surahs. From the last juz'. Just look at the surahs that again will benefit you. For example, me, I recite Jummah every day. Why? Because it helps with clarity of speech, and you guys know how to speak very fast. So
that's improved.
Yeah, thank you. Because I'm reciting. So again, it sounds funny, but there are nuances. There are things, there are challenges we will have. Just pick the ones that benefit you and recite Quran. And this is a lesson to myself. Again, I'm going to clarify that this triangle that I talk about, I haven't cracked it. I'm doing it every single day. But for example, Quran every day is so important. We underestimate it so much. It brings so much peace to the heart. Just reciting, I think it's 100 or 50 ayahs a day. And again, you can crack that 100 by going through the last surahs of the Quran. Doing that every day, it brings peace to your heart. All the issues that you have, all the problems that you have, all the worry that you have, starts with the heart. And the Quran is meant for man to be. It's meant to be in the heart of man. It's meant for you to be reciting every day. So I think that whenever we complain about anything, whenever we worry about anything, the first question we ask ourselves is, when's the last time I recited Quran? And again, like you're reciting Quran every day, I really feel like you'll live, I'm not going to use the word happier, because no such thing as happy as life.
You'll live more content.
A more content life.
Of the challenges,
a more peaceful life. As Allah says in the Quran, He says, إِلَّا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تُطْمَئِنَّ الْقُلُوبِ. He says it straight there. Only in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. He says it straight up. You can try to find it in entertainment. You can try to find it on social media. You can try to find it in friends. You can try to find it in anything in this world. You won't find it. Allah has promised you, you're only going to find it in His remembrance. And we hear it time and time again, but we fool ourselves into thinking that we know better. And that's the reality.
There's times where like,
some deep points, man.
Yeah, no, honestly, man, it's like there's so many things that are just coming flooding back to me on a personal level, and I think of my grandmother, Allah protect her, and she always used to say to me growing up, when she knows I'm visibly scared, so I have to give a speech as a kid somewhere, or I have to recite somewhere, or I have an exam. She used to tell me in Urdu, himmat se jar. It means like go with himmat, like go with courage.
See,
go with your courage.
Important for a man.
And like that, just small thing she used to say to me, like I don't know what it was. It put something inside me every time she used to say it. And like as I've got older and I've understood her better and her mentality, and she's gone through a lot in her life. And as I understand her now in her old age, and I reflect with her and she reflects with me, I realize that when she's saying go with him, she means more than just be like, yeah, be a man. She doesn't just mean that. She means trust in Allah's wisdom and His plan to give yourself courage. And a lot of the time, like there are days where I wake up and I wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Yesterday, just on a personal level,
what happens, bro?
I had a really, really tough morning yesterday morning. Wallahi, like I had a tough morning.
Yeah.
And something happened, or I did something on a personal and like a spiritual level, and like within an hour, a miracle hit me yesterday afternoon. And the only person who I think initiated that was myself. Do you see what I mean?
Okay.
Because I took actions and I trusted in God. I spoke to God. I prayed my salah and I spoke directly to Allah SWT, and I said, look, I need you in this moment. And I will submit to you, to your plan, but I need help with this. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes we feel like that. There have been days where I've broken down in tears, like you said, unexplainably, where you just can't explain like how heavy things feel on you.
You have no idea how many men go through that, by the way.
Yeah, man, bro.
We don't talk about
it. A dear brother of mine, 2 weeks ago, I shook his hand. I said salam to him. I hugged him, like just salam alaikum, and I could see like his eyes were wavering, and he just started crying on my shoulder. No words, nothing. Crying on my shoulder for a minute or two. We went to another room and we spoke for about an hour. And that guy's a dear brother of mine, and he's been working. You know what he told me? SubhanAllah. He said to me that Allah SWT tells us this world is temporary and whatnot. He goes, I recognize that. I know I have tawwakul. He goes, but I need to work on myself as well now, so that I'm prepared for that next world. And since then, he's been, alhamdulillah, in a better place. But we have those moments where we feel extremely low as men, and it's hard to talk to anyone. Like, you know, you can, and Allah is merciful because He gives us, you know, when He says that your spouse is like clothing for you and that protection, you can unload some of that sometimes on your wife, on your mother, your father, your siblings, your children. Probably not your children, but you know what I mean. Your brothers, your friends, but you have to deal with it yourself. You know what I mean? Like, you have to say Ya Ali, and
we need to unload that also to God.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, of course.
Aslan, before even talking, I think we need to acknowledge that our silence,
our
silence, Allah hears.
Honestly,
our pain, Allah feels. Like the certain things that if we comprehend, that all it requires, Wallah al-Azim, is a conversation with your Creator, and it may make things even better. And this tawwakul thing that you were speaking about a bit early on, like that encouragement, the courage that your grandmother speaks about, it's in line with tawwakul. 100%. Because I may want to do something and I'll be lazy about it, but I know it will make me a better man, a better individual, but I just won't do it. But if someone tells me, Yallah, tawakkal ala Allah and do it, I'll get up and do it. Because now there's God mentioned in the conversation, I'm down for it. So, and I do believe it's the way we program, like how I spoke when I was younger. That we have to program ourselves, and whoever's listening today, you have to make that decision. Do I want God every single day part of my life, or I don't? In your good, in your high, in your bad.
Can I ask you, sorry to interrupt you, because there will be guys specifically, and sisters I'm sure, but there will be brothers who are acknowledging it, like they can't escape it, like they live in the filth of their bad habits, for example. They're stuck in it. It's like their feet are stuck in mud and they can't get out of it. You know, they recognize, like, there's a safe spot there. I need to pull my foot out of the sludge, and you know, but like they know what they need to do, but they can't physically pick up the Quran, or they can't physically lay out the sajada. And do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of
it's gonna sound harsh, but I don't think they have understood Allah.
This is what I'm saying. Like there will be brothers, and at times maybe myself or anyone else, who will know, like, I know I need to read more Quran. I know Dua Joshan Kabir, for example, has a dua for this and a dua for that, and I know Dua Yastashir, like you mentioned, has these benefits, and Salatul Ghufayla has that benefit.
You know what it is, Ahmed? It's discipline over motivation.
Yeah.
And I think to feel like a man is to feel like you're in control and to feel disciplined. And I think that's what it is. That's when I said, when I spoke about making yourself a schedule, I said the key is you can write whatever you want in the schedule. As much
it's not
as
routine. It's not routine. It's discipline.
It's discipline.
Right.
It's
discipline.
It's that schedule that you write for yourself. No matter what it is, you stick to it. No matter what it is. If you say gym every day, 6 a.m., you stick to it. 10 a.m., 10 p.m. before you sleep. You know, Salat al-Layl before you sleep, not even before Fajr. Yeah, whatever it is. I'm going to recite 2 rakat today. You stick to it. You pick something, you stick to it. Men need to be disciplined. I know your story about yesterday, and by the way, just off camera, if you want to speak to me, bro, I'm here for you.
I love you, bro. And I do. We do speak, which is good.
We'll chat, inshallah. But it reminded me like of and again, I don't want to get too personal, but there was a time not even that long ago where I was literally what you were describing, and I didn't realize how low a man can go.
Yeah.
This is what kicked me in this whole direction. Like you mentioned, like lying down, not being able to get up, physically can't stand up. Just gone, just absolutely gone. To the extent that I went for ziyarah in December, and it's crazy because like as men, we keep it inside, and I'll get to the middle part in a second. But like I saw a friend there, said salam to him, everything was fine, and then I saw him after I went for ziyarah, and I kind of overcame this. And I was like, just to let you know, I was going for a tough time. He goes, yeah, I know. I was like, how do you know? He goes, bro, I could see it in your eyes. You couldn't speak. You couldn't speak words. Imagine, I was in a position where I didn't realize that I'm not speaking. That's how low man can go. I went to the shrine of Muhammad Islam, and I sat there, literally, I sat in front of the grave, And again, like, it goes back to, speaking to Allah and speaking to Ahl Bayt and asking them for their help, because that's what they're there for. They are our protectors. Those that are, for example, say it, without fathers, or without people that they can look up to, or for example, without mothers, or without, for example, there's a beautiful line by Mullah Basim when he goes, I was very close to my grandmother, and when she passed away, I turned to Fatima Zahra, I said, Ya Zahra, you are now my grandmother. Allah. He's like, every time I ask her for something, she doesn't. So even me, I turned to Fatima Zahra personally, and I said, Ya Zahra, I left everything I know to be on your path. everything I know. I could have stayed a Sunni Muslim. I could have lived a good life. I could have gone into the arts and gone to Hollywood and do everything I want to do. I left all that to become a Shia Muslim. And as a result, I gained a lot, but I also lost a lot. So I turn to you now, and every time I'm in need, you are my protector. You are with me because I gave you something. So now you have to help me, right? So you can always find a member of the Ahl Bayt to help you. Anyway, I was sitting, it's very personal, but the reason I'm sharing it because I hope it might help people. I was sitting in front of the grave of Mu'ayyid alayhi salam, and I said, listen, I'm gone. And I didn't know how low a man can go. I didn't know how broken a man can be. I was like, I don't know what to do, Yani. I'm so gone. I'm gonna sit here until you fix me. I'm not leaving here. You're my imam. I've come to you with a problem.
Yes.
I've come to you. I'm broken. I'm not leaving here till you fix me. And I'm telling you, the person that I walked out was not the same person that I walked in. In that 2-3 hours that I was sitting there, I realized that inside of me, inside every man, and this is not going to be a popular thing to say, inside every man there is a child. Okay? Inside me, for example, that child has positives and negatives, right? Positives are, for example, child's full of wonder, child looks out there, child's very innocent. Negatives are, he's very weak, he needs attention, he needs, like I said, validation. He looks for outside intimacy and love. I've realized, I'm now 33 years old. I don't know how long I'm going to live for. I assume, based on demographic, I'm going to live to 70, 80.
Inshallah, long life.
I can't keep doing this. I'm too old for this now. I'm done with this. I've got things to do. I've got Ahl Bayt to serve. I've got work to do. I've got mouths to feed. I've got things to do in life. I'm done here. I'm not doing this. I'm taking this kid out and I'm leaving it here with you. I'm done. And I'm walking out as a man. And I did that. And I swear to God, since that day, that part of me that I killed wasn't easy, but I feel like for me personally, I had to do it because I had to move on. Not when I say move on, I mean move on from that inner part of me that was bringing me down, even though it had beauty to it, and I had to become a man. And subhanAllah, they say age 33, which I am now, age 33 is the age of the men of Jannah. And I think they say age 40 is when you reach true wisdom, right? I don't know if it's hadith or not. But I realized that at a certain point, every man needs to become a man. And I feel like that was the day where I've been a man for a long time, but I actually really became a man. And I did it with the help of Imam
Well, firstly, bro, just credit to you, man, because firstly, I mean,
but again, it's not easy leaving that. Think about leaving that child behind. Leaving that child behind.
I know.
That looks to you for love and validation, that you look to.
But the fact that you
out of nostalgia and you have all those memories of growing up, I'm like, this is bringing me down. I'm done. You're out. I'm sorry.
I see what you mean.
I'm walking out of here.
But the fact that firstly you are having conversations like this and you're doing self-reflection to an extent where you're willing to have that direct conversation with the Holy Imam alayhi salam, and then criticize yourself, which a lot of us won't do. A lot of us will say, no, I've got this far in life, I've accomplished this much in life, and that's a result of everything, which is a very important thing to do, and I know you do that as well. But also to be able to say that I know what's holding me back from being who I need to become. And the thing you said about every man needs to become a man is very important. And we said me and Sayyid Ali have had this conversation before, that you might be a good man, but you might not be good at being a man.
Oh, Steve.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you might be a good man, but
every man is a male, but not every male is a man. Like,
yeah, literally, yeah, as in literally.
Like, even in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I remember this was shared on the podcast by a guest that we had. Like, when Allah references man, He either talks to them as like dhakar, like male, or He says rijal, men. So He makes differences. He makes you understand that, males exist, but men also exist. So there is a difference, I think, especially in this conversation.
And that Rajul had that manhood that we try to aspire to is a skill, and it's a trait, and it's something that's earned. It's not something that's just biologically developed into you as a male and that you earn in balugh. No, you have to deserve rujul, like you have to earn being a man. And that in itself it comes with so many things. And I've learned all these words in Iraqi, batul, and all these like batal. My son went for his first haircut in the barbers, and my barber's Iraqi Shia, and he's like, hadi batal. I'm like, what? What's that mean? He goes, he's a warrior. I was like, okay, cool, because he got his first haircut. But it just makes me think, like, when we talk about these things and becoming men, there's so many things that come with it. Make your wife feel loved. Make her feel special. Make your kids feel protected and make them feel like they are the center of the world while they need you and you are there for them. Like they never feel abandoned.
And you can't do that stuff if you're not in control of yourself.
You can't control yourself and then you can't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you're right. Like you can't do it.
Not a man.
Make your Lord feel, and not even just feel, make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala know that He is the core of our aspirations and our purpose, like everything we engage in. And we might have a vocational job as a dentist or a doctor or like whatever it is in business. You might be doing anything, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the purpose. Even if in our day-to-day lives and our studies and we're studying something which is irrelevant to religion as such, but we know what our end goal is. Manhood is like we have to go through in what's it called? There's this qasida which I know say much about, like Shadd al-Thama. It's by Muhammad Janami, and in that he talks about Jami'at Ali, like Jami'at Ali,
the university,
right? The University of Amir al-Mu'mineen.
Yes.
Like you have to go through that university to understand what manhood is. And he says in that Noha, he says that Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam went through that university to become a man, and then he was able to face the enemies on the day of Ashura. Like that is what we aspire for, because we hear about Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam and how he protected his women folk and how he fought the enemies. But don't forget, there's a lot about that story which we overlook. How he had to swallow his anger when the horses were given water and the camp of Imam Hussein wasn't. How when Imam Hussein alayhi salam said to him, no, you can't go out. You can only go out when I tell you. And when you go out, you have to go for a mission. Like that in itself is like, wow.
No ego.
No ego. He
No
did
ego
it
except on the battlefield.
He did it as a servant.
When it's required.
He did it
For the sake of Allah.
He
For
did
the sake
it
of Allah, yeah. There you go.
purely as a servant. He didn't do it for his egoism. Like he wasn't, I'm going to go mash up these men who are coming at my family.
Even though he could.
Yeah, and he didn't want to do it for his own anger.
His nobility exceeded his...
When Amir al-Mu'mineen was spat on, and he said, I'm not going to kill you because I would kill you in anger. Like, these small incidences teach us about manhood, like what it means to be men.
Of course.
Inshallah, we can even like earn an ounce of that.
And sometimes, when we do something that's like seen like, oh, that's nice, that's courageous, and sometimes they say, oh, that's very sweet.
Yeah.
I think a lot of men, like they refrain from being good men because they see it as feminine. I don't want to go into that avenue, but don't mistake men's kindness for weakness. And if you're given the example of Amir al-Mu'mineen, there are so much instances where he refrained from doing something, not because it makes him less of a man, or it makes him the better man.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? Like the
Again,
way we see how men are, it's not just about just being strong and everything. No, you have to be godly.
It's about being in control of yourself.
And
you can only truly do that with the realms of Allah.
Yes.
And that's what it is, talking of Allah. And I think leading back to, just closing up on that story that I mentioned, leading back to, I think you mentioned Imam Hussein in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So after Najaf, obviously went to Karbala, did ziyarah Imam Hussein, and what I said to Imam Hussein was I went to Imam Ali for help, then I went to Imam Hussein, and I was like, Abu Abdullah, I am now I am now done with seeking anything from outside of your will. How we think about Allah's will and how we connect to Allah, and the extension of their will is the Ahl Bayt. Allah's will is the Ahl Bayt, right? And we serve the Ahl Bayt. I was like, from now on, you tell me what to do, and I will do it. You point here, I'll go there. You say go over here, I'm done. Like, because I've realized that anything you reach for in this world is going to disappoint you. Anything you yearn for in this world, anything you expect from this world is going to disappoint you. The only salvation that I'm going to find, which I already knew. I knew this. I've recited poetry about it, but to believe it deep down,
it's different.
Consistently,
Yes.
is different.
Yeah.
And this world will put you in a position where you have no other choice. I was like, you give me no other choice. I'm here now in front of you. I've got no other door except for you, except for Abu Abdullah. So I'm right now in front of you, and I'm saying, I submit. You tell me what to do, and I'll do. I am an extension of you. That's it. Nothing else. Khalas. Because anything else is going to disappoint me. And when I die, and when I go to heaven, then I'll collect my reward. I'll have my receipts. I went through this. I lost this. Blah, blah, blah. Thank you. Where's my, Allah, please, if you kindly give me my reward now, thank you very much. I'm good. I'm in heaven now, right? Because ultimately our goal, and we, again, it's a difference between understanding it on a logical level and believing it deep down. We know very well that the next life is the main life. Next life is the hereafter.
So ultimate life.
Eternity.
Yeah.
Eternity, brother. Was it, if any, was it, you'll see every atom of what you do, good and bad. Yes. The Quran says. Every atom, every small thing. Think about that, how far it'll go, right? So I remember I got to a point where I posted a lot of, as a side note, I posted a lot of couplets on social media, right? And I was like, you know what? If the goal is to get to the highest place in heaven, for example, or get to heaven at least, at the very least, right? Then I should focus less on posting short-term content, couplets on Instagram that will, you know, Instagram in 10, 20, 50 years might get closed down. They're gone forever. Let me focus on putting my poetry in books. Because when I'm dead, those books will hopefully still be there and they'll still benefit me, right? And let me rewire my goals in life to be, still can be dunyawi, but with the idea that I'm also looking toward the hereafter as well.
I like that.
My barometer is not when I die. It's not looking back after you there. It's okay, what have I done? I become successful in this and that. Okay, what will now take me to the hereafter? Because that's when you really need your deeds. You know, it might does say, live in this world as if you'll work in this world as if you'll live forever. But work for tomorrow, but you know, don't forget about tomorrow as well, because that's I butchered the statement completely.
Work for tomorrow like you're gonna die today, something like that.
Yeah.
Live in this world as if you're gonna live together, and worship Allah as if you're gonna die tomorrow.
Something like that, yeah. So basically, so again, like it's like we need to remember that that's the hereafter, and we hear it. And we
say that again. Nouri Sardar.
We hear it.
We give context for those who don't understand.
We hear it. We hear it.
Again.
We hear these things time and time again. We say these things to ourselves. We say it to our kids. We say it. We hear it in lectures. We say it to each other. We believe it deep down. And it's not easy, excuse me, to believe it deep down. And that's what we need to get to. And again, I'm gonna give a caveat to all this. I'm far from perfect. I'm not there yet, but I'm hoping that I understand the goalpost.
You say you are a work in progress in itself is an example to us on inspiring us on how to be works in progress.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us are not work in progress. Like, we are just stagnant, stale, like just in our current form, and we will remain in that form as, like, you know, emotionless human beings, basically, or goalless, ambitionless human beings until the day we die. And, you know, there's so many ahadith which talk about the deliriousness of men, Bani Adam being like just absent-minded, walking in the world without goal, without like acknowledgement of what's around us and whatnot, without purpose and drive. But being a work in progress in itself is the start, and we're all going to be a work in progress till the day we die. That's going to be the case with you as well. I mean, we're going to come towards the end now.
The goal should be to reach nafs al-mutma'inna, right? And can you ever reach that? I don't know, but we hope that we'll try and keep going until
that tranquil soul. You know, and that
point being again, like I said before, there's no end game. It's a daily struggle. It's a daily jihad. That's the one. There you go. Until Allah tells you, okay, now you're nafs al-mutma'inna, come back. Until then, it's a daily jihad. It doesn't get easier, bro.
Yeah.
It doesn't get easier. It's not like, okay, now I've got it. No, it's a continuous daily struggle that will get more difficult and more difficult and more difficult. But by strengthening your soul, you can take your head on as a man.
There was not going to be a time in your life where there's no speed bumps, and you know, you don't encounter daily issues. There will be those moments where you have people knock you down, you have people insult you, you have things which hurt your dignity, your pride as a man, or even just as a sister, for example, as well, where you want to rebel against Allah SWT, or you feel apathy and you feel lazy towards worship and these kind of things. But it's about, and we said a couple of weeks ago, spirituality is not linear.
Yes.
Like, it will fluctuate and you will have ups and downs, peaks and troughs. But as long as where you end is far higher than where you start, that's the goal. You can go on whatever journey you want.
As long as you're better than you were yesterday.
100%. There will be days where you're not better than you were yesterday.
There's even a hadith about that. I'm hoping I'm butchering it, but it's something like
Casey Neistat or something.
Which butchering the conversation left, right. I'll show you another hadith though, just to close up. Beautiful hadith. Ali, he says, very simple. Look through this dunya, don't look at this dunya. Very simple. Look through the dunya, don't look at it. And I think we think about the dunya like that, something to look through and not look at. Literally, as much as you can, look through it. You know, there's a really nice tasbih that I recommend. It's very easy. 3 times a day, al-batin. Al-batin, al-batin, al-batin. That's it. 3 times a day. It helps you see the truth in things, and you know, I recommend it to anyone who's listening and yourselves, because it will really help you figure out your journey, where to go, and just see the world for what it is. Inshallah.
Center. Center.
Can I share a final note
course.
from me? And I think it will be I think it will be the end of what I can offer in this conversation, because as I said, I don't want to speak about everything. I still find it difficult to speak about my own issues that I face. But one thing that helps me is knowing that this life, as you mentioned numerous times in the points you made, Nouri, is temporary. This dunya is not the be all and end all, and it's not our final resting place. You know, there is akhirah, and every difficulty and every challenge that we face in this dunya is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to see it as a test, because if we don't see it as a test, we'll see it as God is making us suffer. And that's a huge problem. Do you understand? And that can really change the way we see life and possibly allow us to reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and become atheists, a'udhu billah. God forbid we don't reach that stage, but we have to remember that everything is a test. The Anbiya, the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they all had tests. The Ahlul Bayt, every moment of their life was a test. And we are the slaves of Allah. Who says we don't get tested? Allah didn't promise this life to be comfortable. You know. And this is the problem. We want comfort. We seek comfort. We just want to be in peace. But as you said, Nouri, and you mentioned that earlier on, the true peace is in the remembrance of Allah. Allah bi dhikrillah tatma'innu al-qulub. The problem is we're going away from Allah when the true comfort belongs only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I think two things. One, I read a really nice really nice book which I recommend. It's called, I think, A New Earth. And there's another one called The Power of Now. Those two books are really good. And you can connect it to tawwakul when you read them. But there's a few nice things that it says. One of them is like, don't resist the present moment. Treat it like your friend. Every moment you're in, regardless of what it is, a beautiful moment, a bad moment, right now, embrace it. Be one with it and be present in it. There's a really funny clip on Instagram, which a lot of people made fun of, but it's quite, it connects quite well. Someone asked Will Smith, like, have you seen this clip? What's the meaning of life? Have you seen this clip?
No.
It's funny. So he asked him, what's the meaning of life? I'm not going to do what he did because I can't. But he's like, look at me. He's like, what? He goes, look at me for 30 seconds. He looks at him for like 30 seconds, and the guy's like agitated and looking around. He's like, this is weird. And he goes, okay, now look at yourself looking at me.
Okay.
And he's like, basically what he's trying to say, he goes, once you're at peace with your present moment, tawwakul basically, and once you can observe yourself at peace, you're not living in your mind. You're not living in bills and what's happening tomorrow, and I've got to pick up this thing at 5 p.m. and I've got to recite. No, you're not living in the mind. You're identifying not with your mind but with your soul. You're observing yourself from a third party, because your soul is bigger than your mind. You don't identify with your mind, and you're at peace with the present moment. That's basically what tawwakul is, right? And there's a beautiful hadith by Ali, just going back to what you said about tests. I'm very lucky. I'm not in Gaza or wherever else and going through real difficult times in life. My tests are very weird and complex. I realize Allah tests me with my mind, because He knows I'm an overthinker, so He likes to.
Your tests are creative like you.
There you go. I'm not even joking, by the way. It's so true.
He's tailored your tests.
I was telling a friend some of my stories. He's like, I can't even make up the stories that you give. They're proof that Allah exists, because they're impossible.
To you,
SubhanAllah. But then I read a hadith where it's like Imam Ali, he does a halif. He says, by Allah, whatever. He says, Allah will send His servant into a state of confusion just to test him. Isn't that crazy? And I remember there was a moment where I was sitting in front of that grave, and I don't know if I should share this publicly or not, but let's screw it, we're here now. For a second, for a millisecond, for like a very, very small second in the back of my mind, I was like, what is this? Like, grave, shrine, I'm sitting here speaking to my Imam as if when I say millisecond, as if he can hear me. This is the minute I thought that, I grabbed that thought and I killed it straight away. I said, I know my Imam is here. I know he's listening to me. I know he can hear me. And I was like, if everything that happened to me was just to test me in that one moment, for Allah to say, what's He gonna do? Is He gonna flip and not leave Islam, not leave Shiism, but be like, these things, not really,
start having doubts.
Yeah, but just a bit like you go ziyarah, it's a grave, it's nice, but calm down. No. I killed that straight away, and I was like, if maybe Allah puts us through, a wave of storytelling that we can't comprehend, just to get us to a point where we're like, I'm not gonna pray on time anymore. I'm not gonna do Da'at Kamil anymore. You know, small things. It can be anything. And it can also be blessings as well. You know, you're so busy with work now, you're not praying on time or praying at all, God forbid. You know? So again, we think of tests as very clear cut, car crash, death, you know, but, and again, it's also about how those things as men affect you to an extent where you can't explain it. You know, that's also the big part of it as well. And I pray and I hope that, you know, like anyone who's watching this podcast and going through a tough time, especially, you know, men who are struggling. And another couplet I shared on Instagram that a lot of men kind of resonated with and messaged me about was that as men, paraphrasing it, it's like we bear the weight of the world in the grit of our teeth. You know, you bite down your teeth. On that bite is the weight of the world, because we keep everything inside. Where does it? It sits on our shoulders, right? And it comes down on our teeth, and as a result, our teeth they metaphorically crack and they break. You know, so I think really trying to build your soul to an extent where you can bear that, number one, and also I think very important, like I said in the beginning, understanding what's inside your shadow, what you've placed in your shadow from your youth till now, what you're trying to ignore, confronting that, understanding what it is, unpacking it, befriending it, killing it if you have to, like I did. I think that's so important in terms of becoming not just a man who can provide and be there for the people that need him, but also as a servant of Allah who needs you to be there. Yeah. That's what I told Ali when I was in front of the girl. I was like, look, I'm here to serve you. Yeah. I'm not wasting my time with this anymore. It's a waste of time. I'm not sitting here feeling sorry for myself, being upset. That's nonsense now. I need to be here to serve you. So prep me in a way where I can be your soldier on the battlefield, on jihad. That's what I need to be. That's what we all need to be, servants of Allah. So hopefully we get there.
I think you've hit the nail on the head in every regard today, bro. So thank you very much for flying in just for After Maghrib podcast. That means a lot at all. And listen,
can I get the receipt?
Yeah, inshallah. Take your receipt back to Allah, like he said. Collect your rewards. Guys, just want to echo everything that was said by Said and Nouri, and especially what you said just now, that anyone who's struggling at home and anyone who is going through it, like, again, without trying to sound cliche, but you will get through it. You're not alone. And I know that's not like a comfort to you to know that other people go through it, but that Allah SWT is there with you. He's listening, he's watching, he's hearing you, and he just awaits that craving that you have for him, even for a moment, the turn that you have to Allah SWT just for a moment, where you acknowledge him, where you turn to him. Hadith Qudsi says, you take a step towards me, I'll take 10 towards you. And the concept being that, that building the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a starting point will help us in every single element of our day-to-day lives. So yeah, Sayyid, over to you.
Over to me. That's a big responsibility. But as a final note from me, when you made your closing remarks on this matter, it reminded me of something you told me of before, and I've heard many times, but whenever I see you, I remember this. Like, it happens to my head all the time. It's when Imam Ali Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, I'm not going to say out of his frustration, but because he can't share with the world what happens, he puts his fist and he digs it into the ground. And then when he wants to even let off more steam, just trying to make it more relatable, he let his believing brother know, Kumail, some of the secrets to make his heart feel it. More peace, more ease, and I think this is a lesson we can learn.
Even Ali went through this.
Yeah. If he had some form of frustration that he had to, I don't know, maybe do some action and share with Kumail
and think about what his was. Like, think about this on a mental level. Yeah, it's like, I'm the representative of Allah. I've got all the secrets of the universe,
of the world. Yeah, and
people are asking me how many hairs are on my head.
Yeah, that's the mad one.
Like that's the mad one. Think about tests and what men go through.
Idiocracy.
Like on a paper, it doesn't seem like a big, like to Imam Ali. That's like, think about that. Metaphysics. That's crazy. It's a crazy test.
Big deal.
He says my what happens to me in my life, like the test I go through, is like the prickling of my eye.
The thorn in my eye or the bone in my throat.
Like, imagine a thorn when the Imams speak. They speak God's words. A thorn in my eye consistently. Like,
he says he goes, no nation will oppress an individual like my nation has oppressed me. It's as if for these years, i.e. the years during the Khilafah and whatnot before him, he's like as if I've lived with a thorn in my eye and a bone in my throat.
Damn.
So inshallah we can follow in his footsteps, learn about manhood and tawwakul and strength and courage through Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Yeah.
3 men on a podcast being emotional is pretty much what podcasts are about. So,
No, honestly, you smashed it.
Yeah,
Inshallah, we'll have you on for a fourth time. In the near future.
Inshallah.
4 times lucky now. I don't know, I'll change the
Guys,
phrase.
let us know what you think. Let us know what your favorite part. This is Nouri Sardar behind the pen.
Behind the pen.
And inshallah, you benefit as much as we
May
did.
the ink in your pen never run dry for the service of the Ahl al-Bayt.
Ya Allah.
And inshallah, you have ma'rifah in your imam before the hour is late. I was just trying to become a prophet. Sorry. Poet, sorry.
Same prophet.
It's too late. Time is it now?
Too late. And out.
10 p.m.
All right,
But
guys.
yeah.
We'll see you next week, inshallah. Thank you,
Inshallah.
Nouri, for coming on. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you again to our sponsor, Thaqalain. As always, providing incredible content, and make sure you check them out as well. We will see you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum.